In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest NHL trade rumors. Could the Vancouver Canucks actually find a way to move on from Loui Eriksson? We have some more updates on the situation between the Blues and Rumours Pietrangelo, and we have some more goalie talk, including guys like James Reimer, Darcy Kuemper, and even Ben Bishop, who's still in the playoffs. We have all that and some signings coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. What a busy time we've had here. All kinds of news and rumors going through the NHL here in the past little while. We're about to hit a chaotic time here in an NHL news cycle. We're down to the Stanley Cup final between the Stars and the Lightning that get underway this evening. And once that series is done especially, it could even be a little bit beforehand, the news cycle when it comes to players being traded, looking at free agency, RFAs, it's going to get very chaotic and there's going to be all kinds of news, so certainly stay tuned here. I'll do my best to keep you up to date. We'll be putting out all kinds of videos here every single day to make sure you don't miss anything. Now, for today's news, we're going to start off with a couple of quick signings. We had the Pittsburgh Penguins announce that they've come to terms with restricted free agent forward Jared McCann on a 2-year deal, paying him an average annual value of $2.9 million. So that's a pretty decent contract for McCann. I was a little bit surprised we've seen that one get done so early. Obviously, as we know, the Penguins and GM Jim Rutherford have been very busy. Lots of talk around them and what they might be doing. Several moves have been discussed in the rumor mill by the Penguins, and we'll see what happens here. But McCann's been a name that's been out there as a player they'd be willing to trade in order to improve other areas of the team. To have a guy who could possibly be like a third-line player making almost $3 million might be problematic longer term for them, even though I don't think it's a terrible contract just given the structure of that team. Just because he's signed, I would not rule out the fact that he could still be traded by Rutherford and the Penguins. So might be more easy to trade with a contract in place where teams knowing exactly what they're going to have to pay him over the next few years. So we'll see how that works out, but another signing there by the Penguins. We also have another signing from the Avalanche. They've signed Logan O'Connor to a 2-year contract extension, $725,000. So obviously, like I mentioned before, we're going to have a chaotic time here. A lot of RFAs are going to be due their qualifying offers soon, and we could see cases of many teams, like I thought we could see with McCann, if they're not traded, then they very well could be not offered a qualifying offer so they become UFAs. That's something we're probably going to see a lot of this year. There's a lot of restricted free agents like there is every single year, and if you have to wonder here, based on what they were currently being paid, that what their qualifying offers are, like that could cause them to be traded or to be not given a qualifying offer so they become a UFA. So we're going to have a lot of players, I think, that are normally RFAs switch over to UFAs because teams just don't want to offer up the, $2-3 million, $4 million, whatever it is that they're going to be due on qualifying offers. And it's going to be a chaotic time. So stay tuned, buckle up. We're about to hit a very busy news cycle. Now, the big news, too, that I saw last night that I want to talk about today was Vancouver Canucks and Loui Eriksson. Could they maybe finally have a way out to get rid of that albatross contract off their books and really help with their cap situation? Of course, they have some big-time players they're trying to keep, like Jacob Markstrom, Tyler Toffoli. They'd like to probably keep Chris Tanev. There's a possibility of keeping Troy Stetcher. There's been talks about trading for a top defenseman like a Matt Dumba. There's been other talks like they're going to be a team that's busy and have some difficult, meaningful decisions that need to be made sometime in the near future. And moving out that $6 million cap hit would be huge for the Canucks if they're able to do so. Now, we had reports as well indicating that the Canucks and Jim Benning have given consent to Loui Eriksson's agent, J.P. Barry, to talk to other teams to try to find them a trade partner. Now, that tells me a couple of things. It tells me, one, that the player is frustrated to the point that they're willing to get their agent involved. Obviously, we know Loui has a form of a no trade, so he's going to have to possibly be involved with accepting a deal to another team. So that can be problematic, but obviously if the agent out there is involved trying to talk to other teams and find a new home for their player that they're representing, that kind of tells me that maybe he's hit the frustration level of not playing enough that he's willing to go just about anywhere to continue on for a better opportunity. So that could be a positive thing. And the other thing here to keep in mind, that J.P. Barry is one of the absolute top agents in hockey, very well connected, very influential, and might have more luck finding a new home for his client here than Jim Benning might have been able to do. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that Jim Benning won't be actively trying to talk to other GMs about Eriksson, because he's going to be having, like I said, lots of trade talk, numerous moves that they're discussing around the league. So it just means that there's more bodies involved here, another influential person trying to help find a new home from him, which, like I said, theoretically could mean that the odds just went up that he gets moved and they can get rid of that contract. Now, I would think, though, for them to have a major impact on the team, they would like to have that done before we get to the draft and free agency, which is just, a number of weeks away here. So could we see Loui Eriksson be traded in the near future? It's possible, but I guess we'll have to see. Now, there's a lot of teams that don't have a ton of cap space, so that's going to be problematic. Obviously, in Loui Eriksson's case, like many players, sometimes what they're actually paid in salary doesn't match their cap hit. It's oftentimes lower, especially on front-loaded contracts, which is easier for teams to shell out the money, but they have to have the space to fit them in. So you're probably looking at teams lower in the standings, like Detroit and Ottawa and like Buffalo and teams like that who have right now don't have a ton of commitments to a ton of players and might be able to handle that contract for a short time, because I believe he has 2 years left here on the deal. So clearly, Loui Eriksson, is really dragging down the overall Canuck cap situation. So if they can move on from that, that would be absolutely huge. So let me know what you think as well. Where's a good destination for him? Will the Canucks have to throw in some sweeteners? Because clearly they're not going to be getting much of anything in return. They might have to give up a pretty decent young player to help another team take that on. We're looking at guys like Jake Virtanen, who Jim Benning has made it known that he hasn't been pleased with how he's developed, and he didn't get enough out of him under the playoffs. So, would a team like a rebuilding team like a Detroit, Ottawa, or one of those take Eriksson in a way to get either Virtanen or Troy Stetcher or Adam Gaudette? They would probably be the most usual suspects. I mean, they could try to bargain with Vancouver for, a higher-end prospect like a Podkolzin or a Höglander, but I can't imagine they're going to want to part with those guys. You'd have to think they're going to dangle their RFAs or young players already on the roster. But I guess let me know what your thoughts are on the possibilities here, and we'll discuss further. Now, last night we got word and put out a video on Alex Pietrangelo likely heading to free agency. That talks have broken off with the Blues, and things were not looking good for him to remain as the captain of the Blues, where he's played his entire career up to this point. Now, one of the key things that I've always learned about today, another report came out with an interview with Pietrangelo himself. That he kind of wanted to spell one of the things, saying that many people have been saying that ideally, because his wife is from St. Louis and they have a young family with a bunch of kids, that they would really want to make it work there. Not that that's not true, but he did put out in the interview that he's talked to his wife, they've discussed everything at length, they've looked at what it would be like to stay in St. Louis, what would it be like to go to other NHL franchises, what teams would he like to go to, where could it accommodate him, where would it be good for family life. They're kind of weighing out all their options. He says he's got a strong wife, very understanding, and that really family life will not really impact the decision here, that they're ready to move basically if they need to get what's best for his hockey career. So that's kind of more interesting news there. That makes me think he is likely not returning. But of course, we also saw another report from, I believe it was Andy Strickland of The Athletic, indicating that some of the contract numbers he's seen floating around he believes were lower than what was actually being offered. The last report we saw had $7.7 million going to from the Blues, offering him to Pietrangelo. But the big key thing there was not just the AAV and the money, is that they did not want to discuss the other structure of the contract, whether or not there were signing bonuses, whether or not, how was it paid out? Was there no trade protection? Those fine details were not being discussed. They wanted him to agree to the AAV without getting into the rest of that, which just seemed really odd to me. And that's what was being reported by other Blues reporters and other NHL insiders later into early part of yesterday evening. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen here. I will not be surprised, though, if the Blues do make another comeback effort and try to retain him. Obviously, I don't think they really want him to go, but they clearly only have so much they're willing to spend, and that's about it. Now, the other reports from today indicated that maybe he was asking for even more than $9 million. Some believe he was asking for, I think it was around 9.25. That he wanted to be paid a little more than Roman Josi. Obviously wanted some front-loaded bonuses, some trade protection. So we'll see what happens, but things are looking pretty contentious here between Pietrangelo and the Blues. And based on the reports from last night, and then again what we've learned so far today, I think the odds of him hitting free agency and leaving town just got substantially higher. Now, I also want to take a look at some more goaltending talk, because as we've talked about, it's been like a goaltender carousel here, with many of them likely changing teams this offseason. We've talked about goaltenders quite a bit. Now, well, one I wanted a quick update here on is guys like Darcy Kemper, Freddie Anderson, James Reimer. Guys like Reimer and Anderson are getting a fair bit of attention, and the big reason why is that they're in the final year of their contract. Like, look at James Reimer. His cap hit's over, I think it's almost $3.5 million, but he is paid over I think it was $2.3 million in signing bonus. So he's only has $850,000 left for salary for the coming year. So for teams that are not worried so much about the cap hit, but more so about the actual cash component, what's being spent on salary, he'd be a terrific addition. And the Canes have certainly been no secret that they are shopping his services. So James Reimer is a goaltender who likely finds himself on the move next year. Obviously, we've got guys like Darcy Kemper, who's been talked about a lot. I do have some more teams, apparently, that are inquiring. We've mainly had him linked so far to teams like Edmonton and Calgary, but there's been some other teams as well that we're seeing reports on that are showing interest and having conversations, which include the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously, if they're looking to move Reimer, it means they're looking for an upgrade, so he would make sense for them. You've also got the San Jose Sharks you can put in that conversation, as well as the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, I can't imagine how Chicago would feel about them acquiring Darcy Kemper, because I know one thing that seemed to be very important to Corey Crawford was that he not only signed, but if he does sign in Chicago, that he's the starting goaltender and is the main getting the bulk of the game. So obviously they put him in a 1A, 1B situation with Kemper. I think it'd be great for the team. I'm not so sure Corey Crawford would be happy, and they might be less likely to sign him at that point. But I guess that's something they can leave up for debate a little bit later on. But those two goalies are getting attention. Like I said, with Freddie Anderson with the Leafs, he's in the same boat. He had a big signing bonus already paid out as well, and he's only got $1 million salary this coming year. So Kyle Dubas will not have any issues trading Freddie Anderson. The only concern, I guess, for their side of it for making that move is, do they have a legitimate upgrade on a longer-term deal that they feel comfortable with that works for their salary cap situation? But Freddie Anderson is certainly getting a fair bit of interest, and it's all because of that. Teams know that the Leafs are considering an upgrade. They know that he only is owed $1 million for this year, so they can get themselves a good goaltender for a pretty cheap salary and not have a long-term commitment. They can decide later on what to do with him beyond the coming season. So those goalies are getting a ton of attention here. And another goalie that there's been some talk about as of late, but it's only going to pick up here once the Stanley Cup is all over with, is Dallas goalie Ben Bishop. He's a guy who's been out injured pretty well most of these playoffs. He's a guy who, unfortunately, throughout his career seems to be injured sometimes when it has mattered most. He's got 3 years left on his contract, making just shy of $5 million at 4.9. And you have to think that the Dallas Stars are going to consider making a trade here after this is all done. Regardless if they win the Cup or not, Anton Khudobin has been absolutely phenomenal, and he is going to be an unrestricted free agent if they do not get him signed before free agency hits, and they're not going to have a lot of time to really get that done if they haven't already been having talks. I would assume maybe they were, but where they're so engrossed in these playoffs still, they may not have a lot of conversations taking place. I don't know, but some may think, well, you know what, as much as Khudobin has been good and all that, his price tag is going to go up for sure. There's no doubt. But if you look at the breakdown, there's only a year difference between he and Bishop. Neither one of them are like really young goalies. Like Hudobin's 34, Bishop's 33. Really, do you want to move on from Khudobin? Because at this point, some are going to argue that he may have priced himself out of Dallas. They're showing that he can be a starter and have such a run to go to the Stanley Cup. You know that the demand for him is going to be through the roof. I've estimated so far, going through all the NHL teams, I think there could be around 20 NHL teams that have a different goaltending tandem next year than they did this year. Doesn't mean they're all going to be starters, but if you look through, I think there could be more, but that's just an early estimate from myself, just at a quick overview, that I think there's upwards of 20 or a little bit better teams that if you look at their starter and their backup that they had this year, at least one of the two will be different by next season. So there's going to be high demand, and a lot of that is going to be settled here in a few weeks' time when free agency hits and we start seeing more trades. But there's some pretty prominent goalies that are not signed as of yet. You got Robin Leonard, Jacob Markstrom, Braden Holtby on the free agent market. You're going to have Hudobin if he doesn't get signed by Dallas as well. You've got guys in the trade market like Marc-Andre Fleury. You've got Matt Murray, Darcy Kemper, Freddie Anderson, James Reimer, and there's a whole bunch of other ones as well that are a little less prominent. I may have even left out one or two of goalies as well because there's so many. So you throw Ben Bishop in there, and it's just going to be utter chaos with what teams are going to have options to do here when it comes to their goaltending for this season. So will the Dallas Stars want to keep the guy who got them to the Stanley Cup, the Russian machine as they're calling him, or do they want to try to move on from the often injured Ben Bishop, who's only 1 year younger anyway? They could easily go with Hudobin and Ottinger next year and see what happens from there. So would not be surprising to see Ben Bishop on the trade block here in a few weeks' time once this Stanley Cup final is all said and done, regardless of the outcome. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.